Thanks for joining us in the Winvic Pavilion today. Hopefully have a really interesting and dynamic panel discussion on Smithfield. I will just quickly introduce myself and some context around Smithfield, and then I'll introduce our expert panel, and then we'll get into questions. We'll have about half an hour of questions that we've come up with, and then we're going to have 10 minutes audience at the end. So if you do have a question, please put your hand up and I'll point your direction. So Liz Sparrow from Ridge & Partners. We are a multidisciplinary built environment consultancy. We're 80 years old today. We've got about 1,500 people across the UK. And we, behind the scenes, are involved in quite a lot of large-scale master plans, regeneration projects. Smithfield is one of them. Our project managers are deeply involved in the very complex sequencing and organisation of the various factions, and we'll come on to talk about that a little bit more in the moment. I will just introduce Smithfield, a Birmingham Smithfield project for those that don't know. I'm going to read it out because I don't want to miss key details, because these three people know way more about it than me. So Birmingham Smithfield is the most exciting development site in the UK, if not Europe. An 800-year-old marketplace that's been left behind by modern trading, a heritage site whose medieval significance is obscured by layers of development, a concrete desert where no one lives and few are drawn to visit. Sounds interesting. From its origins, it grew to become the most successful market in England, and the village in which it took place, a thriving town. Today, Birmingham has a population of over 1 million and an economy that's worth 18 billion annually. Plans to reinvent the giant 17-hectare plot have been afoot for over a decade, and it will be another decade before they are finally realised. Developer Lend-Lease, working with a cast of thousands that does include Ridge as project managers, has secured planning permission for a £1.9 billion scheme with more than 3,000 homes, 9,000 new jobs, open public places, and a reinvented market at its heart. The scheme will bring Smithfield back to life and up to date, restoring its historic importance to the founding of the city and setting it up for the future of enormous potential. Delivered through an unusual three-way partnership between Birmingham City Council, Lend-Lease and the Crown Estate, construction is expected to commence this year, with delivery across 4 phases over 10 years. This session is about what it actually takes to make a project of this complexity and ambition work, and what the built environment industry can learn from it. So I will hand over to our 3 panellists. If you could just briefly introduce yourselves, your role in the project, and then we'll get into some questions. So Selina.
Thank you very much. I am Selina Mason. I'm head of place and master planning at Lend-Lease. Lend-Lease is an Australian company. I don't think we're quite as old as Ridge, so probably trailing you by a decade or so. Founded in Australia in the 1950s. But has been involved in the UK market for well over 20 years. So we've got a pipeline now of about £26 billion worth of UK regeneration, one of which is Smithfield, which is one I think is my personal favourite. It's an awesome project because it's right in the heart of Birmingham. It's founded on the regeneration of the markets and creating a mixed-use quarter in the city right next to the Bull Ring. I mean, you honestly, as a regen specialist, you couldn't demand something more perfect for real city-shaping change. It's really fantastic. So my role on the project is essentially to ensure that we have a great consent, that we're focusing on design quality, and we're really generating a place that is of the highest quality and will be of relevance and meaning and identity for people for decades and decades to come.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard Lawrence. I'm the Exec Director for Place. Full title is Place, Prosperity and Sustainability at Birmingham City Council. So I've been in post now for about 14 months, and Smithfield is one of the portfolio projects that I lead on behalf of the local authority. And in its own guise, I think possibly the largest scheme, certainly city centre regen scheme in the country at this moment in time.
David?
Hi everyone, I'm David Conn. I'm a director at David Conn Architects. We're a London-based architecture practice. I've been going for about 19 years, and I'm here because we entered a competition in 2019 for the markets. It was, I think, the only park that had an international design-led competition, and that perhaps tells you something about the status of the project vis-a-vis the wider master plan, which was this would be the kind of place-making centre. It would go some way to giving an identity to the wider master plan. And since then, we've been working on successive versions of the scheme to then eventually get planning in 2024, and we're on tenterhooks as it goes into its next stage. So come later this year, it will be into the drive towards construction.
Brilliant, thank you. I think it demonstrates, immense commitment, doesn't it, to these long-term regeneration projects. So I'm going to dive in and talk about partnership, if I may, from the beginning, and how you build a JV that actually works. They're complex things. We just said there's sort of 3 parties to it. You've got public-private partnership, got council under significant financial pressure, got a global developer, and you've got the Crown Estate involved as well. Fire legislation, historic England, as you said, you couldn't ask for a more complex and interesting brief. If I may put this to Richard, from the council's perspective, what does partnership genuinely mean? And when you're both landowner, planning authority and delivery partner simultaneously, how do you manage all of those sort of potential frictions internally?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? There are frictions, there could be tensions, but there's also opportunity. The one thing really from the authority's point of view, certainly in my world with my role, is that I oversee the property element, the planning elements, the economic development elements, and the infrastructure. So they all form part of the portfolio. So that's quite helpful because they all come under one roof. But that said, a scheme of this size is going to be complex naturally because of its sheer size and scale. But therein lies, I think, the opportunity. And certainly from a public sector point of view, the one thing that we might be a landowner, we might be planning authority, but actually you need to deliver. And the way you deliver is you go through a process to get a key developer and more recently another key funder on side. So we've now got all the component parts together to deliver the Smithfield scheme. So whilst it's possibly been a long time coming, it really is the jewel in the crown for Birmingham. And people who know Birmingham city centre, it's just behind the Bullring shopping centre. It's right next door to HS2 Curzon station. So we will be 45 minutes away from London when you're in Smithfield. So it presents a real opportunity for a new district on the east side of the Birmingham city centre. So we've got to get it right. And the one thing around a longer term partnership is, and people would have seen the news recently, it transcends politics. And what's really important is that we've got a scheme that has planning for phase 1. We've got the people around the table to deliver it. We need to just get on and deliver it now. And regardless of the political environment we're in, we've got that direction of travel now. We've got a cleared site and really looking forward to starting on site.
Fabulous, thank you. So if I may just put a question to you, Selina, about experience at Lend-Lease. So, lots of projects in London. Mm-hmm. What kind of drew you to Smithfield, and what's distinct about it and special about it that you could share with the room?
Well, I think Richard has already hinted on it. Obviously, it's city shaping. The scale of it is, I think, really plays into Lend-Lease's portfolio and our approach, which is around scale. And obviously, the fact that it's also mixed use, I think, is hugely attractive because you can. It gives you a chance to operate across market change over the long period. The connection to the city centre is second to none. It's really remarkably well connected to obviously the future HS2 station, but also New Street as well as Moore Street station. And I always think about Moore Street as the kind of chief executive line. They're coming in from Oxfordshire into Birmingham there, and they are literally 2 minutes away. They just have to nip past Selfridges, and then they'll be here at Smithfield. So connectivity, but also Birmingham has fantastic universities. It's got an incredible range of young people's skills. That's always going to be attractive to a regen developer like ourselves, you've got to see that there's a future here. We're in this for the long term. So this is really providing homes and offices, workspace for businesses and people that are really investing their lives and energy into Birmingham. And alongside that, it has an incredibly young population too. It's one of the youngest cities in Europe, not just the UK. And that youth, again, really is something that can fuel economic development and change over the long term. And when you're doing a project like this, which is going to take 20 years, then that young population is absolutely going to be behind that change. And obviously, I think on top of that, working in partnership with Birmingham City Council, they've had the vision for this place for a long time. It's a really strong vision. It's one that really appeals to us because it's all about place shaping, place making, and really not creating a new identity, but really sort of drawing to the surface an existing identity around the markets and creating a place for the whole of Birmingham to kind of convene in some brilliant public realm around the heart of the city, which I think is what Birmingham really needs. It doesn't have the best. It's got some good public realm, but not, it's not really sort of convening, exciting public realm for people. So there's huge opportunities to really create something that feels relevant and with a strong identity.
And if I may then move on to, so that's obviously the positive side of it. Obviously, it's some of the obstacles that you've hit, just historic England, medieval remains, fire safety changes, and how that has changed, impacted designs, redesigns. I think we've all got the scars from some of that, and how you navigate those while you keep, without fracturing a relationship that's based together. Everyone's got different sort of criteria and success needs. Yeah. So I wonder if you could just share how you've navigated some of those issues.
I think we've built a really strong partnership with Birmingham City Council. I speak for ourselves, and I would hope Richard agrees with that. But I think that this is what sustains a project over the long term. If you're in a partnership, then you really have to kind of lean on each other, accept that you may think about things in a slightly different way, but we have very much a shared vision, and that's the thing that really pulls you through these things. Yeah. And you confront bumps on the road. I mean, the historic England was hardly a bump. It's a great big manor house underneath the site, which then got scheduled after we put planning application in. So it wasn't exactly an ideal scenario, but it's. I think if you've built that really strong relationship with your partner, you just deal with things as they arise, and you move forward and you keep the momentum, and that's the key thing, I think, from our perspective. Obviously, it was we basically, for the historic England piece, when it happened, we kind of, well, first of all, you get angry and you just kind of get annoyed, and then in a quiet moment you think, okay, right, we need to sort this. So we then went to Birmingham and said, right, we're going to go back with an addendum. We're going to change the whole plan. It's going to take us this amount of time. We need consent. Are you going to be able to support us getting this into the committee by this time? Yes, absolutely, 100%. So you kind of work through stuff, and I think with our shared sense of purpose, that's what keeps the momentum and draws you through it. But it's going to be 20. There's going to be more. There's going to be more.
There's going to be bumps along the way.
And it's all going to be and we will always lean into that strong partnership.
Thank you. And if I may just put this to you, Richard, what's, as an honest answer, what do you think could have been done differently? Do you think there was a simpler model that could have worked when you've, in retrospect, when you're looking back at some of the challenges you overcame, or feel like you chose the right path?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because things move at such a pace. 12, 18 months ago, we wouldn't have realised that we'd be launching a mayoral development corporation in East Birmingham to deliver not just the Smithfield project, but 5 other coterminous projects in this part of the city. So what that will do is it will streamline governance, and it is very much focused on outright delivery. We have been talking, as Celine says, for some time around not just this scheme, but the other schemes in and around the city centre of Birmingham. We just need to get on and do them. And very much my background is around delivery. And I think that would be the one thing that if we were starting up now, knowing that we've got the governance in place which aligns the combined authority, central government, local government, private sector coming together with a streamlined planning process, as well as a streamlined CPO land assembly process, I think we would be delivering much quicker than we have done to now. That said, and going past the site as I do most days, it's there, it's ready. We're very, very close now to that start on site, and I think that will send a really huge message out, not just to the people of Birmingham, but the wider economy and UK PLC, that the largest city centre site is starting. It will unlock thousands of jobs, well over 3,000 new homes. Fantastic opportunity for the city. So yes, if we could have done it quicker, yeah, we would have done. But I suppose the nature of these things is that you get to learn to work with people and work with people well. So, and at the end of the day, you don't have place without people, and you don't have people without place. So I think that working together in partnership. And creating new partnerships with the Crown Estate coming on. We've had to change, legal processes around all of that as well. But it means that it builds that strength in delivery.
Yes, thank you. And that brings us quite nicely, I think, onto the community benefits. That is obviously a hugely significant part of the scheme, and sort of honouring and preserving the marketplace, and whilst also allowing future use. I'm quite passionate about heritage being preserved but also experienced, and not being sort of put into a museum kind of situation, but actually is part of the kind of future use. If I could keep you in the hot seat, Richard, for one more. I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but there's sort of severe financial pressures of a local authority. How do you make the case internally and to residents, people of Birmingham, that this project is the right priority at the moment? It takes quite a lot of foresight to look far forward when you're in the midst of that kind of turbulence. So I wonder if you could share with us.
Yeah, so Birmingham's financial issues have been well documented. It's the largest authority in the country. It went into what's known as Section 114. So for press purposes, it is almost declared bankrupt. We're out of that now. We've got a balanced budget. We've got a medium-term financial plan as well. So actually, we've gone from being in a really difficult situation where, quite frankly, everyone just pulled the shutters down. And they did. It was virtually impossible to have any dealings with Birmingham City Council. It shed 25% of its workforce pretty much overnight. And we're now in the process of rebuilding and stabilising. What, of course, doesn't change is life. People still work, they still live. There's still a city which actually the market within the city has been pretty dynamic, pretty buoyant. We are now, as a local authority, playing catch up, but we're coming back stronger, much more financially stable, but also understanding that it's not all about direct delivery. I think if you go back in history to the the days of Chamberlain, when Birmingham had its own water, its own gas, its own electricity, ran absolutely everything. Public sector now is very much around facilitating and enabling. And I think that's one of the things that we have done and sought to do. Be very clear about what our position is as a local authority. Yes, we are a landowner. Yes, we are a planning authority, but we're not actually experts in delivery. But Lend-Lease are. We're not absolute experts in capital commercial finance, but the Crown Estates are. So yeah, I think there is something about knowing our place, knowing our position, but doing things with precision. And with pace, and absolutely not going into the financial situation that the authority has been in over the past 5 years or so. We still have commissioners. They are here until December 28. We're working really hard to get a shot of them before that, if at all possible. But we're building a much more resilient local authority, and delivery of schemes such as Smithfield is testament to how we do that going forward.
Okay, fabulous. Now, I might bring you in here, David. So this is around the market traders and their sort of established livelihoods, quite a specific sort of stakeholder group. How can you just share with us the kind of process of how you kind of brought them on board, how you worked around them, how you worked with them, and how they might have shaped the design and the outputs of the scheme as it's turned out?
Yeah, sure. So Birmingham has existing markets, fish, meat, rag, outdoor, which is fruit and veg. They're all succeeding in certain ways, struggling in others, and one of the challenges to try and make sure that what exists can continue into the new scheme. And if you add on that what you've been hearing about the challenges of the long-term delivery, you can imagine that adds complexity to making this group of stakeholders that are essential to the project both believe and be around for the future project. I mean, we have an involvement in the design of the eventual replacement market buildings, and I can speak to that. There's obviously, within what I've just said, a whole load of complex issues about actually the temporarily relocating of these traders, how to make sure that as far as possible they can continue trading through this kind of concertina process. And from a design point of view, we're London-based, and when we entered the competition in 2019, it was clear that we wanted to be a local team because we understood from the brief that this had to be all about Birmingham. And so we did a number of things. I mean, one was even before we'd won the competition, I started a teaching vehicle in London about Birmingham and markets. So for 3 years, I was teaching a research project that involved students traveling to visit different markets around the world. So that was the kind of more academic side of it. In terms of the engaging the local traders, we joined forces with Eastside Projects, which is a local arts organisation. That's partly because my practice has a history of working with artists from very early days, whether it was direct collaborations or working with galleries. And as the practice has grown and taken on larger projects, that's been a kind of USP. And so, one, we know how to work with artists, but also we're quite close to artists' communities. And so I knew the founders of Eastside Projects, which is based in Digbeth. And so that was a way of us being incredibly a local team. And Eastside Projects had been delivering cultural programs in and around the market for a decade before we'd shown any interest. So with them, we devised a program of working with the local traders that involved actually setting up stalls. So Eastside had a presence in the market. Over the course of a year, we were regularly visiting the traders, and I spent quite a bit of time. The most memorable one was the fish traders, and the realization that live fish are very popular in Birmingham. There's a large Chinese community that wants to buy live fish, and so you start to get a very, very detailed and granular brief, which is you need to have tanks for live fish on site at Birmingham Market. And I'm not sure that would be the same for every market. We did actually travel around the country, and we visited Leeds and a host of others. I mentioned Leeds because it was probably one of the most impressive market buildings. And I would say its success is in large part due to its fantastic architecture. But this relationship to the local traders has continued over the years, such that we now have a fairly forensic understanding of pull distances, how long someone has to drag goods from the drop-off point to their stall is of major concern. How long the journey is from your stall to a refrigerated unit, which will be probably in the basement, is a big issue. So suddenly the design of the basement, which is not anything anyone sees, and certainly the traders, for them it's entirely out of sight too, is critical. If you don't get the relationship of the lifts to the stall to the basement storage, it can be the difference between a market where people are prepared to leave products on site to one where suddenly you've got a huge infrastructure problem because everyone wants to deliver it outside because they don't want to store it. And all of those things then connect to the size of the stalls starts to impact the structural bay of the building. There's only certain structural dimensions that will maximise the stall size. And for Lend-Lease, one of the critical things is, stalls is money, and the market. One of the things it's historically struggled with under, having Birmingham exclusively run the buildings and the leases, is it's difficult to make markets stack up commercially. It's still a business that is based on rental income. So if you place your structural columns in the wrong grid, such that you lose 10% of your trading stalls, you're kind of suffering from the get-go. So these are the kind of things that we had to learn through consulting with the traders. And if you think about the structure, it's now really kind of hardwired into the project.
I think the thing that David really brought to the fore as well, which is something that I think we were kind of aware of, but it wasn't really very present, was the Birmingham's emblem is the artist and the engineer.
That's right, yeah.
Which is, I think, such a wonderful thing. And I know that had quite a profound influence then on the sort of the broader design of the master plan and the design codes. This kind of sense that actually the creative capability of bringing together engineering and art, I think, Birmingham was founded on it, rightly. It's obviously represented in its shield. So really drawing on that history, I think, is something that, again, really plays into the sort of question of how do you create a place that has its, you really draw to the surface an existing identity and really riff on that in a way that's engaging, positive, and will have a lasting impact.
Yeah, amazing. It's the sort of art and science of placemaking, isn't it? And how those two sort
absolutely,
of
100%.
interact.
Yeah.
Thank you. Selina, if I might just stick with you on the sort of build-to-rent homes, there's a real mix of independent shops. If you took bars, restaurants, big piece about inclusivity, but not just sort of aspirationally diverse, but actually affordable and accessible to Birmingham residents. There are schemes where that is not the case, and I just, and how you've tackled that within Smithfield.
Yeah, and I think that is a really pressing question, because it's something I think that probably this is a conversation at UK Reef underpinning most of our discussions, is how do you actually create places that are affordable and relevant to people. And so for Smithfield, obviously the planning consent involves, we've got 10% affordable housing to be delivered, plus we're working with the Combined Authority and Thames England on an additional 10% to take that up to 20%. So that's one. Two, really making sure that the tenure mix is as broad as it possibly can be, so that as many people as possible will have opportunities to live in Smithfield. But on top of that, actually, sort of looking at affordability in a broader sense, thinking about commercial space as well and workspace. And because we've got the joy of having such an amazing location, mixed use with the markets. The traders as individual traders are part of this story too, and their existing customer base has really got to be thought about and preserved, so that actually what we're doing when the markets are renewed is building on that existing customer base, not changing the customer base, broadening it, but still making it relevant to those existing customers, and obviously the existing traders as well. Those who want to go on the journey with us are really supported in doing that, so that they can continue to really create the basis of that kind of immense social capital that we have in the project. So, and alongside that, obviously, we're right next to the bull ring. We're not going to have Zara or anything in our site. We're going to have independent traders. So again, looking at affordability from the perspective of the broadest sense, business as well as individual homeowners and renters as well. So we're looking at it as broadly as we can, and I think also it's really easy to forget that convening quality of public realm as well. That we're building something that is a place in the heart of the city where the people of Birmingham can come together and enjoy the place, and I think that's also part of that story too. So always looking to keep it as broad as possible.
Fabulous, thank you. So I'm going to just ask a few questions about design quality, and obviously David's important that, but I'll bring Selina into that discussion. So I think, David, to quote your own words, you described the market halls as a portal into heritage in the future. And I think we talked about that briefly at the beginning. What does that actually mean architecturally, and how can you expect a building to kind of hold those big meanings together in one space?
Yeah, in terms of a connection to the past, you mentioned earlier the question about the manor house underneath the site. The first market was at the manor house of the de Birmingham family, and it was always under our site, but it was only halfway through the project that Historic England made that such an important part of the project. And so at a kind of macro scale, what the project has done through that effectively negotiation with Historic England and Birmingham is created a new public park that is exactly above the de Birmingham family manor house. It's going to be called Manor Square. So there is, at a civic scale, now a very direct connection from the origins of the town where the very first market was located and this new district. In terms of the design of the market building, as was mentioned before, it became one of the largest, most successful markets in the country in its heyday. And for that reason, there are possibly a dozen different market buildings existing and past, peppered around the site. And one of the things we did as designers was we did a fairly forensic analysis of all the previous buildings, and within the design, I could now point out, and the planning documents describe how this building is literally referencing in its appearance fragments from different markets across Birmingham, so that the architecture is a kind of drawing together of many different markets into one new piece of architecture. And that paralleled the idea that we presented at the 2019 competition stage, that the market would be what we called a joyful convergence. So both literally a convergence of these different market buildings, but also culturally, the site is surrounded by a host of very different communities. There's Chinatown, Digbeth, the Gay Village, the Big Bull Ring shopping centre, and we felt like the identity of this new market would be the bringing together of all of these different cultures, communities into one melting pot. And I think that speaks to the future of the market and perhaps how markets are evolving. They're not simply about trade nowadays, and this is something one can see visiting markets and through doing research, is there's a lot of it's very events based too, so you need to be able to program uses that are complementary beside the trading, and so within this market are a number of spaces that can be for performance, a very large dining hall that could be used for different uses. There's a large terrace above the market that overlooks Manor Square that could be for events, and there's even an event space on the roof, which we're now looking at exactly how it be programmed. But all of these things are part of what a market of the future could be.
Brilliant, thank you. And Selina, with all those ambitious, design ingredients that are going on, but costs are going up and time's drifting on, how do Lend-Lease kind of protect that design ambition? And has there been any sort of difficult trade-offs you've had to make over the time? If you could share some nuggets with us.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. When I think of my career, this is a question. Design quality versus cost is a question that's kind of followed me like a ghost throughout my career. Whether it's at the Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment, sort of saying to clients, public sector clients in particular, no, good design does not cost you extra money, or whether it's at the Olympic Delivery Authority, no, good design is not going to cost us more. I think it actually starts with a mindset, because actually, to be honest, if you're going to go for cheapest cost, then you're not going to get good design. There is a trade-off there, but really this starts with the mindset. If your mindset is about long-term and about investing in an enduring place with buildings that will endure, then that creates a mindset which is you're going to be making decisions about your material choices, the way that you design public space, the way that you design buildings, and the teams that you choose. It's all about mindset, I believe. And actually, in the end, it's not. I genuinely do not think, actually, I have ever been in a conversation at Lend-Lease where there has been an absolute trade-off between quality and cost. Because we always, in my view, and this is a really strongly held view, if you appoint really good design teams, then the creativity that comes to the table when you're faced with a cost crunch will get you a solution. They usually will help you. They expand your resource envelope because they've got creative ideas. If you don't have creative people around the table, then it's going to be harder. And so that is always, in my view, the first principle. Start with a long-term commitment that will then create your mindset in terms of investment. And for goodness sake, appoint good design teams, because then you'll have the creativity you need to get yourself out of some pretty cost-driven deep holes. But you can, because it's creative. Innovation only comes from the challenge.
There we go. There's a lesson out there. Can I just keep you on sustainability and how you've got some high ambitions within these schemes? BREEAM, well, neighbours, and energy efficient design. How do you make those feel like opportunities, I guess, rather than compliance aspects? I think it's probably something we're all grappling with at the moment. How do you fit all these incredible schemes out there, but without it's a tick box exercise.
Being burdened by ticks.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, you can treat it as a tick box exercise, but I think probably, step back and don't do that. I think probably we all need to recognise, whatever the whatever the noise off stage, actually often on stage, but whatever the noise is around sustainability are, actually in the end we do have our duty to the future. This is around about better choices now, to ensure that the resources are available for generations to come. So, I think in the end, it's not really a kind of trade-off question. This is it's a must-have question. If you treat it like a tick box, it becomes irritating and problematic. If you do, as you say, treat it as an opportunity, which is really around looking to the future. And again, have those creative people around the table who do see these things as opportunities, who will help you think through how do you make better decisions? I mean, only this morning I was talking to an engineer about how do you create a public realm which is low carbon? In the future, I imagine we're going to be having to make decisions around where do you invest your carbon? That will be in the vertical build. For a developer, that's obviously going to be in the vertical build. So the public realm, how do you create a public realm actually where you're minimizing the amount of concrete being used? I remember being absolutely horrified at the Olympic Delivery Authority about I honestly didn't. Stupidly, it never occurred to me literally how much concrete goes in underneath a street. It's kind of, oh my gosh, that's shocking. And obviously, you've got to have HGVs going along there, and it's okay, well, I get it. But actually, surely there's a better way, and we need to be a little bit more thoughtful about how we make those choices about where we're investing. And I think the whole carbon question is an interesting one in terms of prioritization, albeit one of my sort of background concerns about that, again, going back to the tick box, is that actually it's quite easy to measure carbon. It's quite easy to measure the sort of sustainability things. Actually, it would be horrifying if we did get to a point where we are in a better place in terms of sustainability, but we've made no impact on equity. So it's sort of, again, you just have to kind of keep an eye on all of the levers that you have. And as you say, I think probably sort of, if you're looking to the future, it's not really about trade-offs. It's actually about something quite exciting.
Indeed. So the next stage is construction's due to start in 2026. Market halls are progressing to site next year. Richard, for you, what does success look like for Birmingham City Council for the next 10 years? How do you know Smithfield has worked? Are you going to look back and say, yes, that went well?
It will be the creation of the next phase of development across the whole of Birmingham. It's such a key site, and just hearing colleagues speaking just got me thinking around, and Selina touched on it, we have the youngest population in the UK. So I think it's 40% under the age of 25. So we've got a real diverse young population. So to the point you're just asking about before, there is an expectation around sustainability, around quality environments, and around needs of the residents of Birmingham. So success is that this is a springboard for other sites. Success is this becomes a key district in its own right in Birmingham city centre. For those of you who don't know Birmingham, it's a very walkable city. And the fact that, as we've alluded to, you can come out of the Bull Ring, which is, big retail hub, into Smithfield, into Digbeth, which is going to be the home of the BBC in 18 months' time. A really creative district, which also sits directly next to the Knowledge Quarter, which is where Aston Uni and Birmingham City University are located. You've got just this real cauldron of economic potential. And so for me, I would like this to be the springboard for one, city centre living of the future, not just in Birmingham, but a global city, because we are a global city. We're the second largest conurbation in the country, and we have the ability to be much bigger than we are. So, there's quite a lot riding on Smithfield. And from a local authority point of view, it's to be able to say, yeah, we intervened at the right place at the right time to do the right thing, and use that as an exemplar of best practice up and down the country for future schemes of this size and scale.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you each one question each. You might not have seen, but we've had every single type of weather that sat through for this last hour. So we'll do a question each, and then if anyone's got any questions, we'll have a few afterwards. So I'll go to David first. What's the one thing you wish you'd known from the start of the project that you know now?
How long it would take?
Just one.
Yeah. What's the one thing?
Yeah.
I mean, get ready. These things take a very long time.
Okay.
And I think that should be the expectation. We've all, I'm surrounded by colleagues that have been on the same journey, and probably you go into it assuming, if everything lined up, that's the project.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that's an incredible. It's not only unlikely; it's just fundamentally not true. And the truth of it is, that level of complexity takes a huge amount of time, effort, collaboration, perseverance. And of course, I would say this. I mean, to go back to Selina's point about creativity. We have had to reinvent the wheel multiple times over the course of the project, and I think that's. If push came to shove, I might have been able to articulate that at the beginning. Now I can really speak with experience. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's a really good that commitment to problem solving continually, I think, is a theme, isn't it, in these types of projects. Richard, any sort of one thing you wish you'd known?
There's probably multiples, really. I suppose the one thing is that, and to David's point, there's been all sorts that have been thrown at this. But I suppose the one thing, rather, that I wish I knew, but the one thing that we did know, and maybe was a bit of oversight, is that Birmingham has always been a really, really progressive city. The Brave New World, the whole kind of post-war modernisation really was set in Birmingham. So it's always had the ability to be future-looking. So I think that really we should have just embodied that right back then. I think everyone was possibly quite naive. Yeah, this will be a great scheme. No worries, we'll be done in 5 years. And here we are now going, wow, okay, it's been a real kind of roller coaster. But actually, I think we need to, and I think we have. We've stuck to the principles. We've embodied the the innovation and the dynamism that I think Birmingham has been famed for, and we'll get to a point where we'll have a fantastic product. It just, it's taken a little bit longer, but personally for me that's been helpful because I wasn't here in 2019. I'm here now, and I hope to see some of this through. So it would be great to be able to say, being a part of that, and this is really the future for where we want to take Birmingham.
The legacy of what you can leave the city.
Yeah.
Understood. Selina, one last piece of
if
learning.
only. I think probably the thing would be to just it's crystallizing issues as soon as possible, really. And I think when I think about the heritage, it was always there. It's always, the manor house had always been there, but I think that it's sort of. I look back and I think, if only Historic England had been clearer in those meetings about its absolute determination. If it had said early on, we're going to object, Selina, instead of which they were going, well, it's heritage, it's balance between benefits and costs. So I was thinking, oh, okay, I can build that argument. I think, and obviously the conversations I think that historically Birmingham had with Historic England as well. Maybe if we'd have pulled all those threads together, perhaps we would have recognised actually it was a slow burn, but it was a big one. And so I think that probably that's the lesson, isn't it? That actually, again, I'm probably going back to what we've already said. It's building really strong partnership, because in the end, the ups and downs, this project has been through so many, obviously the financial issues that Birmingham has faced, the issues that Lendlease has faced, over the course of this number of years. Inevitably there's going to be stuff happens, doesn't it? And so building that kind of very resilient and open relationship where these issues can be crystallized as soon as possible. And I think, we're there now. I think anything that comes up, I'm sure we're on the phone immediately. We kind of know how to deal with it. And, that resilience, I think, is now really coming through as a very strong team. We've all learned that.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we've got a few minutes for questions. If anybody out there has anything that you'd either like to direct to one or all, or none. Yes.
Oh, that's a good one. I think probably I'm super, super excited about the public realm at Smithfield, which I think is really it will make people, I think it's going to blow people's minds how amazing that public realm is going to be. And, we've got some great buildings as well. I mean, obviously the market building is going to be awesome when it's built. And Bell Phillips are doing fantastic. There are lots of amazing buildings coming forward in the scheme, but actually I think at the heart of it, it's got this really strong convening public realm, which is built on top of the Moton Manor House, the historic birthplace of Birmingham. I mean, I think it's kind of, you couldn't dream of a better story, could you, to say this is the thing that anchors my regen project. So yeah, I think in the end that's when we have the opening ceremony. I don't know who's going to sing. Who are we going to get? Who are we going to get? Beyonce or who's it going to be? Anyway, it's going to be an awesome party.
Black Sabbath, surely.
Well, alas.
Yeah.
Anybody else like to take that question, Richard?
Hearing the question being said, the first thing I thought was, and I can say this and you can't, would it be much better than anything done in London? So, not that we're competitive, but we are very, very competitive in Birmingham, and there is something around, this kind of place shaping and the opportunity around that. I do think you're right about the public realm. One of the things, we've got some wonderful spaces in Birmingham, but we don't have a kind of contiguous space, and I think something that that brings it together, so that you've got a very a really beautiful environment to walk around within the city, I think is really important. We don't have anywhere of size and scale where people can come together in a different way. And bearing in mind that, yes, it was the birthplace of the markets, of trade within the city we now know as Birmingham. There's something around how we kind of, not reinstate it, because that sounds a bit too twee, but actually do something for the future and build something for the future. And I think it's of that size and scale which actually you can really create something really quite special.
Fabulous, thank you. I've probably got time for one more question if there's anyone out there with a burning desire to ask something.
Well, the landscape architects we work with a field operations who are American landscape architects. They worked on the High Line, and I was lucky enough to work with field operations on the Olympic Park as well. They did the southern end of the Olympic Park, and I've always been really impressed by how what fantastic designers are and their experience of doing large-scale urban environments that really create places that are relevant to the people that live there. So, you know, joyful, extraordinary public realm. And so that was you know, again, going back to my point, you know, start with your team, you know, get the best in. So we got field operations involved, and you know, they bring together a lot of influences. But in terms of, I mean, one of the places that we're particularly looking at is Bryant Park in New York, which is a park that does have a really strong program of events. It pays for itself through paid events. So I think we're thinking quite deeply about kind of how do you create a stewardship model that means that actually you can sustain this. You don't rely on your neighbours, the residents and the occupiers, to pay for this extraordinary public realm that somehow or other it generates income. So and the Bryant Park model is a really interesting one to look at in that regard. So, you know, that's again looking to the future.
Thanks. I think, David, it sort of influences and you know, outside of the context that you brought into this project.
Yeah, the plan of the market building looks like the plan of a city in a way, in miniature. And I think we were, in the research that we did at the beginning, we were very interested in markets that were quite souk-like, that would be almost like dense parts of cities rather than buildings. And so the hope is that when you go in, I mean, it's not the size of a huge district, but it's arranged around desire lines, so that the orientation from major civic buildings like the church and Church Square into the market feels like an urban progression and not a separate world inside a building. And so in that way, I think it's a very urban proposal. And there was one thought that's related, I mean, to go back to your previous question about what's going to be unlike London, and maybe to reinforce something that was said. If I think of Elephant Park and Silvertown, they are parts of a city, and they are dominated by one use, if I'm right. I don't know Silvertown so well, but Elephant Park, perhaps it's like a residential
It's largely
part.
residential, yeah.
This really is like making the centre of a city, and it has major institutional buildings and public realm. There is a kind of a listed, grade 2 listed church. There's, the site of the city's wholesale markets. There's a major public park. Its organisation is kind of quite centrifugal. I mean, it's like feels like a kind of middle, and I think that is unusual to ever get the chance to do that even. And I think that's what's going to feel really different, and the market will feel. The hope is it feels like an intensification of that kind of urban situation too.
Fabulous. Okay, I think we'll draw it to a close there. Just want to thank you all for your time and your honesty and your reflections on what is going to be an incredible scheme. Can't wait to see it come to life. Just give everyone a quick Round of applause for their time. Thank you.